The chapel was cold. Not the gentle chill of an English autumn, but the bone-deep cold of a tomb. I stood at the altar in my mother's pearl-sewn gown, my hand trembling as the bishop pronounced us man and wife. My husband, the Duke of Stanhope, sat rigid in his wheelchair, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump beneath his skin. "You may kiss your bride," the bishop intoned. Sebastian Carlyle, 6th Duke of Stanhope, turned his chair away from me with a deliberate, grinding scrape of wood against stone. "I will not," he said, his voice low and venomous, "put my mouth anywhere near a viper's." The congregation gasped. My father moved forward, but I held up my hand. I would not cower. Not here. Not ever. Sebastian wheeled himself down the aisle without a backward glance, leaving me alone at the altar in a cloud of whispers and pity. And in that moment, I understood I had not married a man. I had married my executioner. Stanhope Castle was a monument to silence. The servants moved like ghosts through its corridors, their footsteps muffled by thick Persian carpets. The windows, tall and narrow as a coffin, let in thin strips of grey light that did nothing to warm the stone. My bedchamber, assigned to me by the Dowager Duchess with a smile that never quite reached the warmth in her voice, was in the east wing, as far from my husband's rooms as the castle allowed. I had been married 3 weeks, and Sebastian had not spoken to me once. Oh, I saw him. Every morning at breakfast, where he sat at the head of the table with a newspaper raised like a shield. Every evening in the drawing-room, where he positioned himself by the fire and stared into the flames as though I were not there at all. His hands, once strong enough to hold the reins of the finest stallions in England, now gripped the wheels of his chair with white-knuckled fury. He had been thrown from his horse 6 months before our wedding, an accident on the road to London. The fall had shattered his spine and, apparently, whatever capacity for mercy he might have once possessed. "He blames your family," the Dowager Duchess had whispered to me on my 3rd night, her hand light on my arm, her eyes glittering with sympathy. "The ambush happened near your father's estate. He believes, well, my dear, he believes your father wanted to prevent the marriage. To stop the alliance." "But that's absurd," I had protested. "My father arranged the marriage." "Why would he?" "Men do terrible things when they are desperate, Beatrice." She had squeezed my hand. "Sebastian believes you were sent here to finish what your father started. To ensure he has no heir. To let the title pass to his brother." I had not slept that night. Or any night since. Because the Duke of Stanhope did not just hate me. He feared me. And I had no idea how to prove him wrong. I was raised to be useful. My mother, God rest her soul, had taught me that a wife's value lay in her ability to manage a household, to comfort her husband, to be the steady hand that guided the estate through storm and calm alike. I had learned to keep ledgers, to oversee staff, to nurse the sick and bind wounds. But the Duke of Stanhope wanted none of it. "I do not require your assistance," he said coldly when I offered to help him dress for dinner. His valet, a thin man named Graves, hovered nearby with a pained expression. "It is my duty as your wife." "Your duty," Sebastian interrupted, his grey eyes like shards of ice, "is to stay out of my sight." I felt the sting of his words like a slap, but I refused to let him see it. Instead, I curtsied, a small, precise gesture that my governess would have praised, and left the room with my head high. In the corridor, I pressed my hand to my stomach and breathed slowly through my nose. He wanted me to break. To weep. To run back to my father's house in shame. I would do none of those things. If Sebastian Carlyle believed me a spy, then I would prove him wrong. Not with tears, but with truth. I simply had to find it. The Dowager Duchess found me in the library 2 days later. "My dear Beatrice," she said, sweeping into the room with a rustle of black silk. She had been a beauty once, I could tell. Her features were still sharp and elegant, her posture impeccable. "You look pale. Are you eating?" "I am well, Your Grace." "Please, call me Lavinia." She settled into the chair across from me, her movements graceful despite her years. "We are family now, after all." I managed a weak smile. "Sebastian does not seem to think so." Lavinia's expression softened into something like pity. "My son has suffered greatly. He was once the finest rider in 3 counties, you know. And now—" She gestured vaguely toward the corridor, where the faint creak of wheelchair wheels could be heard. "He is trapped in his own body. It has made him bitter. He thinks I am responsible. He thinks many things that are not true." Lavinia leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But I know you, Beatrice. I have watched you these past weeks. You are nothing like the viper he imagines." Tears pricked at my eyes, not from sadness, but from the sheer relief of being seen. Of being believed. "Thank you," I whispered. Lavinia reached out and squeezed my hand. Her skin was cool and papery, her rings heavy with emeralds. "Do not give up on him," she said. "He will come around. I am certain of it." I was not a sneak by nature. But desperation makes thieves of us all. It happened by accident, or perhaps by fate. I had been walking past Sebastian's study late one evening when I noticed the door ajar. He was not inside. I could hear his voice echoing from the dining room, where he was likely dismissing yet another plate of untouched food. I slipped inside. The study was austere, dark wood paneling, a massive oak desk, shelves lined with leather-bound volumes on law and estate management. Everything was orderly, controlled, just like the man who occupied it. Except for the desk. One drawer was slightly open, as though someone had closed it in haste. I pulled it wider, my heart hammering in my chest. Inside were letters. Not love letters or correspondence with friends, but reports. Signed by men whose names I did not recognize. Each one detailed my movements, where I walked, whom I spoke to, what I ate. I was being watched. Documented. My hand shook as I read. And then I saw it. A letter addressed to Sebastian, dated 2 weeks before our wedding. The handwriting was feminine, elegant. "My dearest son, I understand your concerns, but you must proceed with the marriage. The Hargrove girl is the key to securing the estate. Once she is installed, we will deal with the matter quietly. Trust me." It was signed simply, Dell. Lavinia. I stared at the letter until the words blurred. The Dowager Duchess, the only person in this house who had shown me kindness, had written to Sebastian about me as though I were a pawn to be moved across a board. And the phrase "deal with the matter quietly," what did that mean? I heard footsteps in the corridor. I shoved the letter back into the drawer and fled. I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that letter. Deal with the matter quietly. What matter? The marriage? Me? By dawn, I had made my decision. I found Sebastian in the conservatory, where he often went to brood among the dying plants. He sat with his back to me, his shoulders hunched, his hands resting lifelessly on the arms of his chair. "I need to speak with you," I said. He did not turn. "I have nothing to say to you." Then listen. I moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to look at me. His eyes were shadowed, rimmed with exhaustion. For a moment, I saw not the Duke, but a man, wounded, afraid, alone. "I am not your enemy," I said quietly. "I did not harm you. I did not arrange the ambush. I have done nothing but try to be your wife, and you have repaid me with cruelty." His jaw tightened. "You expect me to believe you are innocent? When your father stood to gain everything from my injury?" "My father arranged our marriage before you were hurt," I shot back. "Why would he destroy the very alliance he sought?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his gaze. "I found letters in your study," I continued, my voice shaking now. "Letters that suggest someone else wants me here. Someone who benefits from this marriage and from your hatred of me." "What are you talking about?" "Your mother." The words hung in the air like a blade. Sebastian's expression shifted, shock, disbelief, and then something darker. Anger. "Get out," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Sebastian! Get out!" I fled before the tears could fall. I was a fool to think he would believe me. But I was not a fool enough to stop searching. Over the next 3 days, I moved through the castle like a shadow, slipping into rooms when their occupants were elsewhere, listening at doors, piecing together fragments of conversation. The servants, I discovered, knew more than they let on. A maid whispered about payments made to strangers. A footman mentioned that Lavinia had been in London the week before Sebastian's accident. And then I found the ledger. It was hidden in Lavinia's sitting room, tucked beneath a false bottom in her escritoire. Inside were records of payments, large sums of money, sent to a man named Howell. The same name that had appeared in one of the reports in Sebastian's desk. Howell was the name of the man who had been driving the cart that spooked Sebastian's horse. My blood ran cold. Lavinia had paid for the ambush. She had crippled her own son. And now she was watching me, waiting for the moment to strike again, because if Sebastian died without an heir, the title would pass to his younger brother. Lavinia's favorite son. I clutched the ledger to my chest and ran. I had to show Sebastian. I had to make him believe me. But when I reached his study, the door was locked. And through the wood, I heard Lavinia's voice, soft and soothing. "She is dangerous, Sebastian. You were right to suspect her. I have uncovered proof, letters from her father, plans to take the estate. You must act quickly, my darling, before it is too late." My heart stopped. She was framing me. I did not knock. I shoved the door open with such force that it crashed against the wall, and both Sebastian and Lavinia turned to stare at me. The dowager's expression was smooth as glass, but I saw the flicker of calculation in her eyes. "Beatrice," Sebastian said coldly. "We are in the middle of a private conversation." "I know what she is doing," I said, my voice shaking. I held up the ledger. "I know everything." Lavinia rose gracefully from her chair, her mouth curving into a sad, sympathetic smile. "My poor child. The strain has been too much for you, hasn't it? Sebastian, perhaps we should call for the physician." "She paid for the ambush," I interrupted, stepping forward. "Your mother arranged for you to be thrown from your horse. She paid a man named Howell. It is all here, every transaction, every payment." Sebastian's gaze snapped to his mother. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lavinia laughed, a light, tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. "Darling boy," she said, turning to Sebastian with wide, wounded eyes. This is madness. She is trying to turn you against me. Can you not see? She knows you have discovered her treachery, and now she is lashing out. Look at the ledger. I cried. The dates match. Anyone can forge a ledger, Lavinia said smoothly. And I am afraid, my dear, that you have just proven how desperate you are. Sebastian's face was unreadable. He looked at me, then at his mother, then at the ledger in my trembling hands. Give it to me, he said. I crossed the room and placed it in his lap. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Sebastian opened the ledger. His eyes scanned the pages, line by line, his expression growing darker with each moment. And then he looked up at his mother. Mother, he said quietly. Why is your signature on these payments? Lavinia's smile faltered. I can explain. Explain why you paid a man to kill me. The room went deathly silent. Lavinia's mask slipped. For the first time, I saw her true face, cold, furious, cornered. You were always weak, Sebastian, she hissed. Even before the accident. You would have run this estate into the ground with your soft heart and your ridiculous ideals. Edmund is twice the man you are. Get out, Sebastian said. You cannot. Get out of my house. Lavinia left without another word. But I should have known she would not go quietly. That night, I was summoned to Sebastian's room. A footman delivered the message, his face pale and frightened. His Grace requests your presence immediately, my lady. I found Sebastian by the window, his chair turned toward the darkened gardens. He looked smaller, somehow. Broken in a way that had nothing to do with his legs. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. I stood frozen in the doorway. Sebastian, I have been cruel to you. Unfairly so. He finally turned to look at me, and I saw the anguish in his eyes. I let my fear and my pride turn me into a monster. I knew, or his voice cracked. You nearly paid the price for my blindness. You did not know. I should have. He reached for me, his hand outstretched. Beatrice, The window shattered. Glass exploded inward in a spray of glittering shards, and I saw the glint of a pistol barrel in the darkness beyond. Instinct took over. I threw myself in front of Sebastian's chair just as the shot rang out. The impact was white-hot, a lance of fire in my shoulder that drove me to my knees. I heard Sebastian shout my name, heard the clatter of his chair as he tried to reach me, but the sound was growing distant, muffled, as though I were sinking underwater. Footsteps pounded in the corridor. Servants burst through the door, shouting, chaos erupting around me. And through it all, I felt Sebastian's hands on my face, his voice raw and desperate. Stay with me. Beatrice, stay with me. I tried to speak, but the darkness was pulling me down. The last thing I saw was his face, stricken, terrified, finally seeing me. I woke to candlelight and the scent of lavender. Pain throbbed in my shoulder, sharp and insistent, but bearable. I turned my head and found Sebastian sitting beside my bed, his chair pulled as close as the frame would allow. His hand was wrapped around mine, his head bowed as though in prayer. Sebastian, I whispered. His head snapped up. Relief flooded his face, so raw and unguarded that it stole my breath. You're awake. His voice was hoarse, wrecked. Thank God. I thought. I am not that easy to kill, I said, managing a weak smile. He did not smile back. Instead, he raised my hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to my knuckles, a gesture so tender it made my chest ache. "You saved my life," he said. "You took a bullet meant for me." "Of course I did. You are my husband." "I have been a terrible husband." "Yes," I agreed. "You have." A startled laugh escaped him, rough and disbelieving, as though he had forgotten how to make such a sound. "Beatrice Carlyle," he murmured. "You are extraordinary." "I am stubborn," I corrected. "There is a difference." "No." He shook his head, his grey eyes fierce now. "You are brave. You are loyal. And I have spent weeks treating you like an enemy when you were the only person in this cursed house who was on my side." I squeezed his hand. "What happened to Lavinia?" His expression darkened. "She has been arrested. The magistrate found Howell, and he confessed everything. My mother will stand trial for attempted murder." He paused, his jaw working. "She wanted me dead so that Edmund could inherit. And she was willing to frame you, to kill you, to achieve it." I closed my eyes. "I am sorry." "You are sorry." He sounded incredulous. "Beatrice, I nearly—" "You did not know." "I should have." "We cannot change the past," I said softly. "But we can choose what comes next." He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression, not the cold fury I had grown accustomed to, but something warmer. Something like hope. "What comes next," he said slowly, "is that I spend the rest of my life proving to you that I am worthy of your courage." "Sebastian!" "I mean it." His grip on my hand tightened. "I do not care if I never walk again. I do not care if this chair is my prison for the rest of my days. But I will not waste another moment treating you as anything less than the remarkable woman you are." Tears slipped down my cheeks, hot and unbidden. "You really are terrible at apologies," I whispered. He laughed again, a real laugh this time, full and unguarded. And then, slowly, carefully, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead to mine. We stayed that way for a long time, breathing together in the candlelit silence. I recovered slowly. The physician said I was lucky the bullet had missed anything vital, lodging itself in the muscle of my shoulder. It would heal, though I would carry the scar for the rest of my life. "Good," I told Sebastian when he fretted over it. "Now we match." He had scars of his own, after all, not on his skin, but in the way he moved through the world. In the way he had learned to navigate a life he had never imagined for himself. But something had changed between us. He no longer avoided me. Instead, he sought me out, in the library, in the gardens, even in the dreary conservatory where the plants still refused to bloom. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. I learned that he had once wanted to be a barrister, that he played the piano beautifully, that he was terrified of thunderstorms. And he learned that I could not sing to save my life, that I had a weakness for strawberry tarts, that I had once punched a boy who had tried to kiss my younger sister without permission. "I should have known you were dangerous," he teased one afternoon as we sat by the fire. "You did know," I pointed out. "You just thought I was dangerous to you." His smile faded. "I will regret that for the rest of my life." "Then stop regretting it," I said firmly. "And start living." He looked at me, his grey eyes searching mine. "I do not know how to do that anymore," he admitted quietly. "Then we will learn together." Spring came late to Stanhope Castle. But when it finally arrived, it brought with it a softness I had not thought possible. The gardens, neglected for so long, began to bloom under the careful attention of the new groundskeeper, a young man Sebastian had hired over the protests of the old guard. "Change is good," he had said when I raised an eyebrow. "Even when it is uncomfortable." We were walking, or rather, I was walking and he was rolling beside me, through the rose garden when he stopped suddenly. "Beatrice," he said. I turned, expecting another joke or observation. Instead, I found him holding out a single white rose. "I never gave you flowers," he said. "Not at our wedding. Not after. I would like to start now." I took the rose, my throat tight with emotion. "It is just one flower, Sebastian." "It is a beginning," he corrected. And it was. Every day after that, he left a flower for me, roses, lilies, peonies, whatever the garden could provide. And every day, I fell a little more in love with the man he was becoming. Or perhaps, the man he had always been beneath the fear and the pain. One evening, as we sat together in the library, he reached for my hand. "I want to try," he said. "Try what?" "To stand." I stared at him. "Sebastian," the physician said. I know what he said. His jaw was set, determined. "But I want to try. With you." It took 20 minutes of effort, of trembling muscles and gritted teeth and my hand steadying him when he swayed. But when he finally stood, wobbling, unsteady, but standing, I could not stop the sob that escaped me. "I am standing," he whispered, his voice full of wonder. "You are standing," I echoed. He looked down at me, his grey eyes bright with tears. "Thank you," he said. "For not giving up on me. For saving me. For—" I kissed him. It was not graceful or perfect. It was desperate and clumsy and tasted of salt and joy. But it was ours. When we finally pulled apart, he was smiling, a real, unguarded smile that reached all the way to his eyes. "I love you, Beatrice Carlyle," he said. "And I love you, Sebastian Carlyle." Sebastian Carlyle, 6th Duke of Stanhope, spent the next 52 years trying to deserve her. He never quite managed it. Beatrice remained the better half of him, the braver soul, the steadier hand, but he died at 79 with her fingers laced through his, having loved her fiercely and faithfully every single day. He learned to walk again, though he never rode. They had 4 children who inherited their mother's courage and their father's stubborn heart. And on quiet evenings, when the castle was still and the fire burned low, he would will himself to wherever she sat and rest his hand on hers. "Thank you," he would say. And she would smile. For what? For proving me wrong. Some marriages begin with love. Theirs began with suspicion, bloomed in defiance, and was forged in blood and truth. But it ended, 52 years later, in a sun-drenched bedroom overlooking the roses, exactly as it should have begun. With trust. With tenderness. With a vow that was never broken. I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and every day after.